Hello, I'm Robert W. Gehl, speaking to you from Toronto, Canada, where I am a professor in the Department of Communication and Media Studies at York University. I'm delighted to have this presentation be part of the behind-the-scenes conversations on platform governance research. The presentation is based on research I conducted for my forthcoming book, Move Slowly and Build Bridges: Mastodon, the Fediverse, and the Struggle for Democratic Social Media, which is set to be published with Oxford University Press later this year. The book focuses on alternative social media, specifically the Fediverse, a network of many small social media systems. The most notable Fediverse system is Mastodon, a Twitter-like microblogging system. My plan for today is to give a quick overview of the Fediverse. Then I will present materials from my book, predominantly from chapters 3 and 4, which deal with codes of conduct and defederation decisions. The final third of the presentation will be some behind-the-scenes looks at how I think about consent in my research, as well as how I publicly share my research process. So let's start with some background on the Fediverse. To understand the Fediverse, let's start with what seems to be an ancient digital technology: email. Email is a federated system. Email resources appear on multiple computer servers, which can communicate with one another. For example, let's say a friend of mine uses Gmail, another friend uses Microsoft Outlook, and I use ProtonMail. Despite the fact that we're each using services of very different companies, we can still communicate. This is because all email servers agree to abide by a set of technical rules, a protocol called SMTP. Today, there's a means for social media data to be treated like email. In 2018, 5 technologists working with the World Wide Web Consortium published an open standard called ActivityPub. ActivityPub provides a protocol for social media data, much like SMTP provides a protocol for interoperable email service. It standardizes typical social media activities: making a profile, posting something, liking or favoriting that post, boosting a post, and commenting on posts. Let me walk through this by considering 3 distinct Fediverse systems. The top logo is that of PeerTube, which is a server software that allows for people to post videos, comment on them, and share them. The logo to the left is for PixelFed, which allows people to post images. And the logo to the right is Mastodon, which is a microblogging system. All of these servers can communicate with one another via ActivityPub. That means my friend could post a video on a PeerTube server, another friend could see it in PixelFed and comment on it, and I can like and boost that post on Mastodon. Now, it's hard to overstate how radical a departure this is. You can't do this with corporate social media. You can't post to Facebook and expect a friend on X to comment on it. You can't even post to Instagram and expect a response from Facebook, even though they're both owned by the same company, Meta. The result of ActivityPub has been a global network of heterogeneous social media servers. The average size of each server is about 500 accounts, but the network itself is comprised of tens of thousands of servers with somewhere between 8 and 14 million users. So we have a network of interconnected social media servers. A major question is, what social or cultural factors play a role in how these servers are interconnected? After all, we're talking about platform governance. This brings me to a major focus of my book, the concept of the digital covenant. A way to understand the digital covenant is to start with what it is not. So here's a tiny slice of a 7,000-word document few of us want to read. It's a terms of service agreement. When you see this, many of you probably instinctively reach for the scroll on your mouse, or you want to swipe the screen down, anything to get past this legalese. We scroll past these all the time. Terms of service agreements are a contractual relationship between you, the lonely you, and a vast corporation. That corporation is attempting to specify in advance every possible interaction you might have with that corporation. Now, this is not the practice on the Fediverse. On many Fediverse instances, in contrast, it's a very different relationship that's imagined. Consider server rules such as these from Mastodon.art, a Mastodon instance. Compared to terms of service agreements, server rules are easier to read. Instead of specifying every possible interaction, they provide a relatively simple set of deontological rules to abide by. Server rules are often part of codes of conduct used on many Mastodon instances. Codes of conduct are often developed by the communities themselves. By way of example, I can point to air.social, an instance I helped to set up, which has a code of conduct developed by myself, the other admin, and the moderation team. In addition, the AIR Code of Conduct is open to modification by the Association of Internet Researcher members who are members of that social media site. Instead of a relationship between a lonely you and a corporation, you are part of, dare I say this most dangerous term, a community of people on a particular server. Moreover, your instance is only a little part of a big instance, or rather, your instance is only a little part of a big network of other servers or instances, each with their own rules. The current ActivityPub-powered Fediverse emphasizes the instance as the organizing principle. The Fediverse functions largely as an instance-to-instance relationship as opposed to the user-to-service relationship that we see in corporate social media. Codes of conduct at an instance level help shape connections between instances. This results in what Diana Zully and I have called the digital covenant, an agreement between instances who abide by similar rules. In fact, the Mastodon project uses this language. The Mastodon Server Covenant is a key document here. It's a requirement for any Mastodon instances that wish to be listed on the project homepage. So here I want to entertain two questions. First, how did we get here? How do we get such a covenant? There's actually a very long history of federated relationships in political philosophy, but what I want to focus on is the shorter history of covenants in free and open source technology groups. A second question is about breaking connections. I keep talking about how instances might connect through shared values, but what about when they disagree? In fact, there are very good arguments for breaking connections, so I'll talk about them in a bit. In what follows, I'll draw on research I conducted for my forthcoming book. So let's address the first question. How do we get to the Covenant of Fediverse? A key resource to understand this is Christina Dunbar-Hester's excellent book, Hacking Diversity, which is documented diversity advocacy in the FOSS world. And a key activist in this space we can consider is Coraline Ada Emke, whom I've interviewed for my book project. The struggles of activists such as Emke are documented in Dunbar-Hester's book. Now, starting in the early 2010s, Emke and allies called for codes of conduct at tech conventions. This was in reaction to documented harassment of women and marginalized people at tech conventions and observations that FOSS development was dominated by white men. Emke and allies faced death threats, but succeeded in their fight. And by way of example, it's not a tech convention, but the Association of Internet Researchers ratified their own conference code of conduct as part of a broader wave of organizations also doing the same thing. Emke's activism also led to the practice of online codes of conduct. This is important because FOSS projects are often developed across the internet, not just in-person events or within organizations. There's now ubiquitous documents found on many FOSS projects, contribute.md or Contributor Covenant. And all this connects to Mastodon. Mastodon started in 2016, so it's emerging within the midst of the struggle. It initially attracted many queer and trans developers who were invested in having codes of conduct in projects. Not only did Mastodon adopt a code for the development of software in 2017, it also inaugurated what I think of as a radical practice. Instances themselves where people would sign up, engage in social media, adopted codes of conduct and use them instead of terms of service. The earliest servers, including Mastodon.social and awu.space, helped establish this practice in 2017. As instances with like-minded codes of conduct federate, this leads to that digital covenant, ethical values shared across many small communities. What emerges is what feminist philosopher Iris Marion Young might call decentered, diverse, democratic federalism, a network of instances sharing a thin set of global values. Now, most of this analysis is Mastodon-centric, which makes sense since Mastodon is central to the story of the ActivityPub Fediverse, but the Fediverse is actually bigger than Mastodon. So what about other projects? Well, the Reddit-style Fediverse software system Lemmy now regularly adopts codes of conduct. Bookworm, which is a federated alternative to Goodreads, goes even further, adopting not only codes of conduct, but an ethical source-style license called the Anti-Capitalist License. So it's attempting to bake its values into its very license. The use of codes of conduct have spread from Mastodon to many, though I should say not all, federated social media systems. Now, recall my two questions from earlier. What about non-federation? That is, denying federation. So far, I've only focused on positive connections. What about the negative? What about disconnection? Well, codes of conduct matter here too. Consider awu.space, one of those early Mastodon instances. They use approved list style federating, vetting every single connection made to their server. I interviewed the admin of awu who told me that codes of conduct are central for that process. The allow list approach is a case where disconnection is assumed from the start. Connections are opened slowly and purposely, rather than easily and then maintained over time. And there's also the use of block list style defederation. This is where instances are listed as bad actors, and that list is imported by instance admins to sever connections between servers. A key example here is the bad space, developed by somebody by the name of Ro. I interviewed Ro for my book, and he talked to me about how the bad space was born out of experiences of anti-blackness on the Fediverse. Codes of conduct are important here too, but the emphasis might be more on the conduct or the enforcement, which is to say that being put on the bad space list or other block list is largely a function of having acted unethically on the Fediverse. And here we see another covenantal network emerging. The bad space isn't just run by Ro. Instead, it's based on the actions of a network of admins who have banded together. Through their individual block list decisions, a collectively developed list, or rather a series of gradated lists, has emerged. Those lists enable new instance admins to preemptively block unethical parts of the Fediverse. So I'm going to conclude this first two-thirds really of the presentation this way. Reading corporate social media terms of service is hard, but agreeing to them is easy. Corporate terms of service are designed to be clicked past and forgotten, even though they hold incredible weight. By contrast, reading a code of conduct is easy. They tend to be short and very readable. Building a covenantal network comprised of instance communities who abide by a thin set of global values found across multiple codes of conduct is hard. But that's the point. Building societies is messy, self-determination is messy, ethical interactions are messy. Federated social media is messy and hard because it compels people to self-govern in ways that corporate social media simply does not demand. And here I want to give credit to Jim Brown of Rutgers for this contrast. He made a similar case in a presentation, and he let me cite that example. So with that quick overview of my book behind us, let's talk about the behind-the-scenes aspect of my work. As I've been indicating throughout part one, much of this book is based on interviews. Here's a list of a few of the folks I talked to. Here are a few more. I'm grateful to all of them, and frankly, I'm proud that I was able to interview them. The book is also based on participant observation. I've been on the Fediverse since 2017, arguably longer because I've been on federated social media that predates ActivityPub, but we can talk about that some other time. Basically, I've spent years being a member of instances, but now I'm helping to run an instance. All of this is giving me insight into how the network works. And the central lesson I've learned is trust and consent have to be at the core of the project. This is because of corporate social media history. We've seen unethical social media research and use of data. There are many examples. We could look at training of LLMs today, or we could go back and look at Cambridge Analytica, or the Facebook Emotional Contagion study of 2015. We've also seen FOSBRO and gamer harassment of marginalized people across a variety of social media, corporate and alternative. So what I've tried to do with my work is to be as open as possible. I started this project really in earnest in 2020, and at the time I started a blog called fossacademic.tech to document things. One goal of the blog is to talk about my experiences running free and open source software as an academic, but the other part is about the process of writing this book about the Fediverse. And I did that to be show people, who I am, my intentions, and how I'm thinking about the project. And if you look at the blog, I would draw your attention to some key posts. There's posts describing my interview process, how I use my funding to send money to Fediverse artists, my critiques of unethical Fediverse research, and posts that discuss the contents of my book. Everything I'm writing and doing in this space, including today's presentation, is really about a key audience, the people of the Fediverse. And I'm going to give you a little bit more of a detailed example. I was asked to give a keynote at a research symposium at the University of Warwick. Based on my participant observation in the Fediverse in the run-up to that symposium, I could say that the symposium was viewed with some suspicion by people on the Fediverse. The worry was about things like research and tool. Would the workshop take the Fediverse as an object rather than an equal participant in research? Would the outcome be tools that have no benefit to the Fediverse, that only benefit researchers? And would my giving a keynote be seen as endorsing such practices? So in reaction to these concerns, I drafted a presentation called The Road to Air.social, and I posted a draft of that ahead of the symposium, sharing it with the Fediverse. I also posted notes about the conference and shared them with the Fediverse, and I offered to answer direct questions from Fedi members about the symposium. Now, I should say that the worries about the Warwick conference didn't come to pass. The Warwick conference was really actually a wonderful forum to talk about ethical approaches to Fediverse research. I was really happy to be a part of it. In addition, I've been sharing the full text of my Fediverse-related presentations on my website. This one's included, so I've been sharing those presentations as a matter of course. Whenever possible, I make sure my Fediverse journal articles research is open access. And now I'm part of a network of scholars who are thinking about ethical approaches to alternative social media research. So I'm running out of time, but I will conclude here by saying I hope my book is not just about the Fediverse, but also for the Fediverse. It's not to say it won't be critical, but then again, people on the Fediverse are very critical too. So I hope my work reflects some of their perspectives. Thank you so much.